Trevor, Rob, welcome to the show. It's great to have you on Floor Talk.
Oh, pleasure as always, Sal.
Accenture released a report on AI adoption in life sciences earlier this year. The study pointed out that 40% of all working hours in life sciences will be impacted by generative AI, yet only 50% of organizations have a comprehensive plan in place to ensure positive experiences and outcomes. So tell me, Trevor, what are the best ways that organizations can assess their readiness for AI and ensure positive adoption?
I think the biggest opportunity for us today is really in highly regulated, whether it's FinServ or whether it's pharma. And the way we've helped pharma clients and FinServ clients and NetApp, was in the show earlier, is by providing them with what we call an AI maturity model. So what we do is we create small selective models that are uniquely bespoke for each pharma company or each FinServ company or each highly regulated industry company. Give them the best of both worlds, both from large language models that are open source, as well as the ability to have a highly tightly curated data set that really has context and can add value. And that, I believe, is the right way to go, where you're not sacrificing security or engaging in hallucinations, et cetera, while at the same time you're leveraging best of breed in terms of generative AI and large language models.
Trevor, I agree a lot with what you said. I think in order to ensure successful AI adoption, there needs to be a really robust infrastructure and plan to make sure it succeeds. I want to offer another perspective though, and that is the behavioral aspect of digital transformation. One of the things I've encountered with clients has to do with people looking at artificial intelligence as a negative, as machine takes over the human. And what I really would advocate for is that we really change the dialogue, that we replace artificial with augmented or amplified, because the reality is that's what it does. It augments human performance, it augments human intelligence. And so I think to be successful in an enterprise rollout, you really have to set the context the right way to ensure that people adopt it and they're not scared of it, because you look at a job elimination and it doesn't have to be that way.
Now, Rob, you've been in big pharma for over 20 years. So tell us about your background, what you did at Novartis and Pfizer, and what you're working on now.
Big pharma, about 20 years or so. Most recently with Novartis, where it was the Global Head of Digital Medical Affairs based out of Basel, Switzerland. Part of that, I was at Pfizer, where I was in clinical procurement. So my background really has two dimensions. One is clinical medical procurement and strategic sourcing, and the second being digital innovation. I think what makes it unique for life sciences is that so much of life sciences chases the shiny objects digital. The Me Too projects. They have VR, I want VR. They have AI, I want AI. And so I left Novartis in the spring of 2023 and started my company RS Consultative to really help close that gap. And I really focus on two things. One is partnering with startup companies that want to build a go-to-market strategy in life sciences, particularly pharma. And then I work with biopharma companies, specifically in medical affairs, on how they can really get more ambitious and implement digital data and AI for the long term.
Now, pharmaceutical companies typically have three arms: commercial, research and development, and medical affairs. Perhaps you can quickly explain to us what exactly is medical affairs?
I love that question because I think medical affairs doesn't get the attention it really should when you think about life sciences. Often when I say I work in pharmaceuticals, the first thing people say is you must be a sales rep, right? And they don't understand there's another dimension. So if you think about it like this, your R&D function, and I'm going to make it real simple, focus on the clinical research aspect, getting a molecular entity to market, okay? You have your sales marketing organization, that's obviously implicit in what it does. Medical affairs focus on something really important, and that is bridging the gap between deficits in clinical care and scientific knowledge. And I want to point to two things that are really important in this conversation. The first is the plight of the US and the rest of the global physician. All surveys show that being a doctor is no longer as revered as it once was. On top of that, listen to this stat. In 1950, medical education was thought to double every 50 years. By 2020, every 73 days, pre-COVID. So think about that now. How do doctors keep up with it? And that's where medical affairs comes into play. How can it look at data? How can it generate evidence? How can it communicate things around differential diagnosis? Don't forget, when physicians or healthcare professionals leave their studies, what was considered good clinical practice at one point changes over time. So how to keep doctors current with the current trends in medicine?
Because when you think of medical science liaisons, at the end of the day, they're really the brains behind the enterprise because, correct me if I'm wrong, but when you go to HCP, typically if there's questions about drug trials or there's questions about the efficacies of a cure or new cures out there, the sales rep has to engage the MSL and bring them in, right?
So it's a little more complicated than that, but I think what the medical affairs function offers is the ability to talk openly around the science. that sometimes in a traditional marketing sales function they cannot do. Because typically MSLs, to your point, are either physicians or they may be PharmDs, pharmacists, enter industry, and they can really go deep on the product. They can really go deep on the science. They can go deep on the research, the publications, the disease burden on patients.
So what do you think the impact is of the ability now for, I mean, obviously at some point in time, the ability to keep track of every single new cure out there or new drug being developed, et cetera, involved exhaustive work, the ability to go through, tons and tons of data, tons and tons of sheets. And now with LLMs, the ability to really talk to your data per se, and with simple, NLP or English language or French or German, the ability to extract that information, go back in time per se, and look at studies or use cases that may have existed, and then answer your HCPs in a prescriptive fashion, it's pretty transformative, right? So how do you look at medical affairs liaisons and the industry as a whole, or the function as a whole, leveraging generative AI and AI?
Sure. So Trevor, you're really hitting a key point. If you look at if we take medical affairs, for example, right? I think that we're moving into a second generation of digital transformation, really that's supported by Gen AI and agentic AI. First generation might be things like VR and AR and stuff like that, and around, let's just say, the function of scientific communications. I don't think the ROI is there. I think what the real ROI is for pharma, life sciences, and medical affairs is things around generative AI. So for example, how can a medical affairs function or a commercial function or clinical development function make better use of aggregated insights to inform next best actions, right? And that's a simple way to look at it. But how can we then think about autonomously creating, let's just say, an MSL twin that's capable of acting independent, with intent, with controls, really to drive efficiency and productivity in the function? Because the waste in the system, that's where I think Gen AI can really help pharma. I mean, think about it. Pharma companies are struggling with profitability. You look at the newspaper, look at the online, companies are laying off people left and right. That speaks to profitability challenges.
And Rob, what do you say are the greatest challenges or obstacles to AI adoption in pharma?
It's been said that pharma is the turtle in the digitalization race, right? Pharma's a bit late to it. Some of the functions are a bit late to it. I think there might be some elements of truth to that. I think it's highly regulated, like you mentioned, Trevor. I think it's complex. It's not so simple. You're dealing with patient lives. You're dealing with HIPAA information. It's complex. I think the biggest barriers really are a couple things. One, a disconnect between actions and words. If a pharma execs really want to drive digital transformation, things with, let's just say, AI, they have to put the resources, infrastructure, and budget behind it to support effective execution. That, I think, is a missed opportunity. I don't think they really truly get behind it. Some do, some don't, but there's obviously an area they can improve in doing so. The other thing which I think is really important, and it's a huge gap, is baselining. And what I mean by baselining is the following. Anytime you do change management, you have to look at where are you coming from to where you want to get to. So in pharma, I think one thing that was missed in the early era of digital transformation was setting appropriate baselines to evaluate what does success look like after you do a project. Gen AI now offers an opportunity for pharma to course correct its approach, do baselining up front, so that when you implement a Gen AI program around insights, for example, you know what success looks like, and you can then do ROI measures.
I like the analogy of the tortoise versus the hare. You talked about turtle and the hare, or turtle and the rabbit, but and I think from the perspective of, I think that in some ways, because regulated industries have been so prescriptive and slow moving, it also presents the biggest opportunity, in terms of disruption, in terms of innovation and top line impact. I mean, we talked about the fact about automation and automating tasks, rote tasks, increasing productivity. But I think you hit the nail on the head in terms of where agentic AI can go. Like, for example, you and I talked earlier about the fact that we can actually clone best performers in the enterprise. We can clone virtual MSLs and have them do a lot of the work that happens, so you can amplify, one MSL, one physical MSL with 10 virtual MSLs. So talking about agentic AI and taking it even further, where you can now actually have a digital clone, not just of a persona, but also of a best performing person. How disruptive do you think that's going to be, and what are your thoughts?
So we talk about agentic AI, for example, and really creating almost like a virtual twin, right? And really the technology, while available, I think broadly, is not really being embraced as well as it could be within medical affairs and pharma. Agentic AI, to me, is really, I think, the epitome of where things can go. And the idea is that if you can free up any pharma resource and alleviate the administrative burden of what they do by 20%, 30%, and they can then focus on more value add, measurable impact. That becomes a force multiplier for pharma.
All right, so we've talked about how large the opportunity is, but now let's flip this around. How can company leaders hold themselves accountable to avoid the pitfalls of too many AI pilots, new tools to learn, and vendors to manage?
So look, I think that there's a lot of excitement about AI in the industry, and you can imagine that any company in any industry is running around doing tons of pilots, trying to figure things out. Some pilots might be fantastic, some may just be kind of a check the box exercise. I would say a few things. One, ensure there's an enterprise agreement on what success looks like and where you want to get to, okay? Ensure, like I said earlier, it's resourced appropriately, okay? Make sure that there's baselining done so you can really effectively see what you're trying to solve for. To me, that's really missing. And you have to hold people accountable. And what I mean by that is the following. If we take a medical affairs example and the topic of MLR, medical legal review of materials that go out in public, okay? You have to have legal folks in the room with you as you talk about the future of that function. And what I see going on sometimes is you'll have these digital teams not including everybody in the discussions. And what does that spell for someone that's a lawyer working in a pharma company? And really, if you involve them in it, they can recreate what does that future role look like.
What we advise companies to do is, number one is make sure you're the right partner. Two, set the vision and understand that it's a journey. It's a marathon, not a sprint. So pick the low-lying fruit and the quick wins that's going to inspire your teams, right? And then a big hairy goals that you can aspire to. Three is ensure you have the right data. And the right data, there's no good time to start. I've never met a company that says it has perfect data, but having the right partner can help you understand what's good versus great, and someone who can help you curate that data and provide you with a tool set to really take advantage of technology out there. Four, what works for consumers with ChatGPT and OpenAI may or may not be what will work with a highly regulated industry. And that again brings me back to choosing the right partner, having the right focus, understanding what the quick wins are, while at the same time keeping that big hairy goal out there, which is going to help move the top line and really make an impact not only for yourself, but for the industry as a whole. So,
all right, well, it's been wonderful to talk with you both. Thanks for joining me today.
Pleasure always.
Great to be here.